Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University on the Dice Tower.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Wild Assent, game designed by Robert McConnell and published by Lazy Squire Games. We are using the first production print of the game here, and so the components you see may differ if you've got a later print.
Let's get to the table.
Wild Assent is a skirmish game which plays in two very distinct ways. There is a cooperative mode known as the Hunt or the Campaign, and this pits a band of seekers up against the creatures of the wild. Here, the seekers will work together to try to slay all of the creatures, or capture them for later, without themselves being downed. While between scenarios, they'll work together to upgrade their encampment and heal themselves for future adventures. There is also a competitive mode known as the Arena mode, in which two teams will face each other trying to wipe each other out or wipe out a designated Assent character. Other than sharing some components and a battle dice mechanic, these two modes of play are fundamentally quite different from each other, with too many differences to cover both in one video. As such, we will be covering only the cooperative mode of the game, known as the Hunt. The Hunt is a 10-game campaign of randomly generated scenarios, and the game also comes with the option of a story-driven campaign, also 10 games long, which plays under the same rules. So now let's learn how to set up and play the Hunt. For your initial setup, first choose the 4 characters or seekers that you're going to play in this campaign. You must control 4 seekers irrespective of your player count. The seekers are present on these double-size and double-sided boards, but not every side that you can see here is a playable Hunt mode seeker. Specifically, you're looking for a seeker with a wooden background and some special effects on the right-hand side. These ones with the wooden background but an open space for a card are enemies in the Hunt mode, and these ones showing the stone background are used in the competitive mode. As another check, these icons on the right hand sides of the seekers you can play have a number of little bars under each of the icons, whereas the ones for the competitive mode do not. Choose your 4 seekers and take their minis. Now you'll set up your encampment, and this is your home base which you're going to be leveling up between scenarios. You'll always begin the game with a level 1 barracks, and so put this level 1 token on the central building. Now shuffle up the worker cards, which show this back, and deal 3 face up. You now have a choice. You may make 2 more level 1 buildings, placing level 1 tokens onto the buildings of your choice, and you may keep one of these 3 workers, placing it in the leftmost slot of your workers track, and shuffling the other 2 back into the deck. Your choice of building may also allow some of your seekers' powers to be unlocked, but we'll talk about that later in the video. The campaign is played in 10 seasons, and so place the season token on one of the 1 spaces around the edge of the board. Now set up the decks, and some of these are going to roll over from game to game. These cards are the Scout cards. Separate them into threat level 1, 2 and 3, and set the 2 and 3s aside for now. Shuffle the threat level 1s, and this is your Scout deck to start the campaign. These are the monster cards. These also come in threat level 1, 2 and 3, but you can keep them together for now. These are the equipment cards. These can be separated into 3 types. The workshop cards, showing 1, 2 or 3 anvils. The unique cards with the star and wings icon, and the market cards with a little cart icon. The worker cards we've already seen, these are just shuffled and set off to the side. The instinct cards are simply set aside in order. These contain all of the actions of the different creatures, and you'll assemble a deck with these at the start of each scenario. And finally, the encounter deck is simply a randomizer with numbers between 1 and 6, and you'll shuffle this ready for randomization purposes. You won't be using these components in the cooperative mode, and note that there are tiles which show the same creatures as the creature cards. You'll be using the cards, but not the tiles. You're now ready to begin the campaign and set up your first encounter. Draw 2 scout cards from the top of the current scout deck and then choose the one that you want to encounter, shuffling the other back into the deck. This card shows you the encounter's name, a special rule which will be in effect, and which creatures you'll be facing. Here it is a Threat 2 Lava Fiend and 3 different Threat 1 creatures. From the creature deck, take any named creatures in the appropriate threat level and then shuffle up the creature deck to deal out any others, again at the appropriate threat level. You can only ever have 1 copy of each type of creature, regardless of its threat level, so if you get any duplicates, discard them and keep drawing until you have the correct number of unique creatures. Take the matching creature minis from the box and find each creature's 5 instinct cards, shuffling them together into a common deck which will guide their actions. Any other instinct cards are set aside and not used in this scenario. Now it's time to set up the board. Draw an encounter card. Go to pages 14 and 15 of the Hunt rulebook and then set up the map according to the number you drew. On the red numbers you'll place the enemy minis, pointing in the direction that's shown and placing them according to the order in which they were drawn, so the first drawn enemy being on number 1 and so on. On the black numbers you'll place the seekers, using them in whichever order you wish, but again respecting the directions shown on the layout. And then on each black X you'll place an obstacle. Use the encounter cards to randomize it. On the draw of a 1 or a 2 you'll place the skull, which represents partial cover. On a 3 or a 4 you'll place the tree, representing full cover. On a 5 you would place Thornbrush, representing full cover but also a hazard. And on a 6 you would place a pit. When you're drawing these out, you'll draw 2 cards at a time before shuffling them back into the deck and skipping over any where you've run out of components, and continue that until all obstacle slots are filled. Place each seeker and creature's health tracker on its starting health around the edge of the board, as this is where you will track health during the game. Finally, check your encounter to see who goes first, the creatures or the seekers, and you're now ready to play. An encounter in Wild Assent is played in rounds, and in each round, each seeker, who is still active, will take 1 turn, and the creatures, collectively, will take the same number of turns. The players will choose the order in which they activate the seekers, and when a seeker activates, it takes its 1 activation and then takes an exhaustion token. After each such activation, the creatures will flip the top card of the instinct deck, and then the creature shown will take an action according to that card. Continue activating like this until all seekers have an exhaustion token and the creatures have taken the same number of turns in this round. You'll finish the round with the resolution phase, which involves taking the exhaustion tokens off, and then you will start again with another round. An encounter continues in this way until either all creatures or all seekers have been removed from the board. In the case of creatures, this can mean they are either all slain or captured. When this happens, the seekers win the scenario and they return to their encampment for the encampment phase, where they will recover for the next scenario and level up the encampment. The other outcome is that all seekers are downed by the creatures, and when this happens, the seekers lose both this scenario and the entire campaign. So with that, let's learn how to activate a seeker. When a seeker activates, it may move according to its movement value in the top left corner and then perform 1 action. The action may be to attack, to use a skill or equipment item which has an action on it, shown by this triangle, or to capture a creature. Additionally, a seeker may take any number of free actions, which are shown by the words free action, and these may be done at any time, including during movement. First we'll look at movement, but before that, some definitions. Each square on the board is known as a field. The field immediately in front of a mini is called its front, and immediately behind is its back. The front and the two spaces diagonally in front of a mini are called its frontal arc, and all 8 of the fields around a mini are considered adjacent to that mini. These definitions will come into play throughout these actions. So first, movement. A seeker has movement points on its turn equal to the number in the blue circle, and if there is a triangle here, it is conventional movement, with no special abilities associated. A movement point may be spent to move 1 step to the front, sidestep 1 to the right or left, or to rotate in any direction. This is a directional game, so maintaining the direction of these minis is important. For this seeker with 4 movement points, they could be spent from here to go 1, 2, 3, 4, as an example. You cannot move into a field containing another mini, whether it be friend or foe, nor a field containing full cover. You can move directly through a field containing partial cover, but those 2 fields of movement cost 3 movement points. You cannot end your movement on partial cover. A character with the wing has flight, and do note that I'm borrowing this from the competitive components, and these characters may ignore minis and obstacles as long as they finish on an empty field. A character with the double arrow is swift, and a swift character, in addition to going forward, left or right, can spend a movement point to go diagonally forward, left or right, including squeezing between obstacles or minis. The other keyword relevant to movement is halt, and this is actually a skill keyword, but in order to use a skill with halt, then you're not allowed to move at all on that turn. Only the obstacle tiles on the board have any impact on your movement. The printed river is for decoration only and can be crossed without restriction. And do note that these movement rules apply equally for the creatures as they do for the seekers. Now we'll talk about attack, and when you launch an attack, you'll be looking at these statistics here in the little blue circles underneath your portrait. To launch an attack, you first need to pick a valid target on the board that is within your range, shown by this number on the left next to the arrow, and that is within line of sight. Here the range is 3. And loosely speaking, line of sight is any line that can be drawn through your frontal arc. So in this instance, the range of possible attack would be through the frontal arc out this way for a maximum of 3, through the frontal arc out this way for a maximum of 3, and then any fields in between of that range. To consider line of sight more precisely, draw a line from the center of your field to the center of the field of your target. If that line crosses any part of a field containing another mini or full cover, then line of sight is blocked. Only touching the corner of a blocked field does not count as blocking line of sight. So here, line of sight to this enemy is blocked by this thorn brush. Partial cover does not block line of sight, and so this enemy is within range. And this mini blocks line of sight to this mini, but not to this one because its line of sight only touches the edge of this field. Having chosen a target, it's now time to roll attack dice. This third number here is the number of attack dice that you will roll as part of the attack. Count up the total number of damage symbols that you've rolled, which includes both these swords and these specials, so here it's 5. Add that number to your base attack, which is this middle number here. So here it's 2 for a total of 7. The icon next to this central number will tell you whether it's physical or magical damage. So here it's 7 physical damage. Next, check for specials. If you have an on special skill and rolled at least 1 special, then you'll resolve this effect once. If you have an on special with a number next to it, then you must roll at least that many specials to resolve the effect. And if you have an on each special effect, then you will resolve that effect for each special you've rolled. Some of these will add more damage, but some of them will have other effects. Finally, check the board layout, and if you're attacking the enemy from behind, you'll add an extra 2 damage. To determine this, draw the line of sight line to that enemy, and if the line passes through that enemy's back field, it counts as attacking from behind. This one would not be an attack from behind, but if the enemy were oriented this way, then it would, leading to an extra 2 damage, which, from the 7 we had before, is a total of 9. Now determine the enemy's defense. The defense will depend on whether this is a physical attack or a magical attack, so here the Wildflower has no defense against physical attack. Check for and resolve any on-defense skills that the enemy may have. And finally, check for partial cover. If the enemy is adjacent to a field containing partial cover, then its defense increases by 1. Deduct the defender's defense value from the attacker's damage value, and apply the difference as damage. So here the Wildflower loses 9 minus 1 is 8 damage. Once a creature's health is reduced to or below 0, that creature is slain and its mini is removed from the board. The players now collectively gain resources, matching the type shown at the top of the card, in number equal to the threat level of the creature. These go straight to the players ready to be spent during the encampment phase after the encounter is done. Now we'll look at all the different sorts of skills in the game. Each seeker has default skills shown underneath the portrait and then unlockable skills shown on the right hand side. These can't be used until they've been unlocked at the encampment. Any weapons or equipment that you've gained between scenarios will also have skills printed on them. There are 4 main types of skills. We've already spoken about the special skills, which have this star icon. Any skill showing this triangle icon is an active skill, and on your turn, instead of taking an attack, you can use your action to use an active skill. In the specific case of unlockable active skills, when you use one of these skills, you must flip this token over to the cooldown side. This skill cannot be used on consecutive activations, and so after one turn of not using it, you'll flip it back over to the unlocked and ready side. A skill with the plus icon is a passive skill, and this will always be in effect or will trigger at a specific moment. And this icon is also passive, but it is specifically defensive passive and will trigger when attacked. I won't take you through all of the different active skills in the game, but I will take you through some of the passive ones which impact combat. Knockback allows you to push an enemy backwards a number of spaces after an attack. Where the full range of knockback is not possible, such as if this were a knockback 2, then the enemy would gain 1 extra damage. So here, knocked back 1 with 1 damage. Knocking an enemy back into the thorn brush causes 2 damage instead of 1, and causes bleed, which I'll talk about in a second. While an enemy who is knocked back into a pit must spend its entire subsequent activation moving 1 step adjacent to that pit, taking no other action. Some of the skills in the game result in persistent negative status effects, and these are tracked from turn to turn for their duration using these tokens. As a general rule, you can gain more than 1 of a token when you first receive it, but you can never add to an existing stack of the same token type. I'll take you through the 6 most common status effects, but do note that there are a lot of specific ones unique to individual characters, and I'll leave you to read about them when you play with those characters. For the common ones, there is Stun, which forces you to skip an activation, and after skipping one, you discard the token. Fatigue, which reduces your movement by 2 to a minimum of 1 for 1 activation. Immobilize, which reduces your movement to 0 for the next activation. And do note that if you get immobilized again, then discard both and replace it with Stun. And Blind, which reduces your number of attack dice by 2 to a minimum of 1 for the next activation. There is Bleed, which causes the victim to lose 1 health point at the start of each activation until bleed is healed. And this occurs automatically as part of any other heal action. And finally there is Taunt, which has both a Taunter and a Tauntee token. The Tauntee may not direct any attacks against any character other than the Taunter until the Tauntee has taken at least 1 health from the Taunter, either by attack or skill. There are other tokens available for all of the unique player skills, and larger tokens represent global effects that apply to all characters on the map. The other type of skill you may come across is summoning, and when there is a summons, this will result in a new and smaller creature being placed adjacent to the summoner. If there is no adjacent space open, the summoning fails. The statistics for the summons will be on the summoner's board or card, and, unless otherwise stated, the summons has 1 health and will do physical or magical damage the same as the summoner. The summons will activate immediately upon being summoned, and then prior to the summoner during all subsequent activations. It is immune to status effects, and if the summoner is ever removed from the board, then the summons is also removed. The last action available is to capture a creature, and this is an alternative to slaying it. This can be beneficial because whereas by slaying a creature you will gain resources, when you capture a creature you'll get to trade it in for gold between scenarios. You will need a balance of resources and gold to upgrade your encampment appropriately. The Seekers must work together to capture a creature, and capturing a creature requires as many Seekers as its threat level plus 1. So, supposing this is a level 2 Wildflower, you would need 3 Seekers to be involved in the capture. To initiate a capture, the creature must be down to half of its health or lower, rounded up. To initiate a capture, the creature involved must be at half of its health or lower, rounded up. Then, as its action on a given turn, a Seeker places a capture token, chained side up, on the border between its current location and the creature. Once this has been initiated, any other Seeker may contribute by, again, coming to an adjacent space and placing a capture token on the chain side up. The only difference here is that after the capture has been initiated, the creature can be above half of its health rounded up if it's been healed between turns. Once a Seeker has a chains token on the board, then on its next activation to continue capturing that creature, the Seeker must lose 1 health and then, as the action, flip the chain token over to the captured side. On any subsequent activations from that point forward until the creature is successfully captured, then this Seeker's activation will be only losing 1 health, taking no other actions. As an alternative, the Seeker may choose to move away or take another action, but if this happens, the capture token is removed from the board. This token would also be removed if the Seeker involved were ever downed. On the positive side, a creature who is currently involved in being captured will not take its normal actions when it activates. Once the required number of Seekers is involved in a capture and all of the capture tokens have been flipped over to the captured side, then that creature is successfully captured and is removed from the board. These tokens also come off the board. And so that completes all of the options that are available to a Seeker when being activated. You may spend your movement points to move or rotate, and then take 1 action. This can be an attack, an active skill, or a capture. Once you're done, place an exhaustion token on the Seeker. If you used an active, unlockable skill, flip it over to the cooldown side, and flip any that were already in cooldown back to the unlocked side. Play then passes to the creatures for activation. On the creature's turn, you will draw and resolve 1 card from the top of the Instinct deck. This will list one of the creatures in the game and how it will act on this turn. If you draw a card for a creature that is already off the map, whether it be slain or captured, then you simply skip this creature turn. If the creature you draw is presently in the process of being captured, but the capture is not yet complete, then each of the Seekers involved in the capture loses 1 health, but the rest of the card is not resolved, and again you go back to the Seeker's turns. Only if the creature is on the board and not being captured will you resolve all of the text. Once the draw deck is empty, then you will go through the discard pile and remove any cards that are associated with creatures that are no longer on the board. Then you'll reshuffle and make a new draw deck. This means that as the scenario goes on, you'll have fewer turns where no creatures attack. Each card is resolved in 3 steps: target, move, and action. In this way, you'll determine first on whom the skill is going to be used, then how far the creature will move to use it, and then finally what the skill is. The target could be an enemy, meaning one of the seekers, and this will generally be for an attack, or it could be another ally or self, meaning one of the creatures, and these are usually for healing or other positive abilities. Where multiple targets exist, there will be some criteria for working out which one is targeted. Here, for example, the Lava Fiend will target the Seeker with the lowest remaining hit points, and if tied, the nearest to its current location. It will make this determination of target completely independently of whether it's possible to resolve the subsequent movement and attack against that target. That is, if the Lava Fiend is too far away from the target to actually resolve this attack, then it still will target that distant enemy, it just won't end up resolving the attack, which is lucky for the players. If it's still tied after all of these, then the players choose, and they can pick the target which benefits them the most. And this in fact is true for anything on this card which is either tied or ambiguous. The players can choose whichever outcome is most beneficial to them. After choosing the target, the creature will move, and could move in two ways, either a careful advance or a regular advance. In either case, there will be three numbers, and these correspond to a Threat 1, Threat 2, or Threat 3 version of that enemy. In the case of an advance, the creature will move either its entire measure, or it will stop once it is adjacent to and within range and line of sight of the Seeker. In the case of a careful advance, the creature will move only as far as is required for the skill on its current instinct card. A creature with a careful advance may even retreat from its target if it's already well within range. But do remember that these creatures still need to be rotated the same way as the Seekers, and at the end you'll ultimately need to be within line of sight of the target. All of the same keywords I described before, that is halt, swift and flying, apply also to the creatures. Finally, resolve the attack as printed on the card, and this will follow all of the attack rules that we described for the Seekers. Once again, the card is going to show a certain amount of base damage and attack dice, and this number may vary depending on the threat level of the creature. In addition to resolving the card, there are also some creatures that have a passive skill on their basic card, and you'll need to make sure that you resolve this at the appropriate time. The instinct card will not prompt you to resolve this effect. Here again we see a skill relating to summons, and any summons already on the board will activate prior to this creature when its instinct card is drawn. If the creature targets a Seeker, then the summons will target that same Seeker. If the creature does not target a Seeker, or is currently being captured, then the summons will target its nearest Seeker. Character healths in Wild Assent are tracked on one of the two tracks around the outside of the board, and you can use either. There are two identical tracks. There are several abilities allowing you to heal during the scenario, but no character may ever heal above its starting health. When a Seeker suffers damage greater than its health, then it is downed and removed from the board. Downed heroes can return in subsequent encounters, but not in this encounter. If all Seekers are ever downed in the same scenario, then the campaign itself is lost. If, on the other hand, you're able to capture or slay all of the creatures on the board, then the scenario is won. For any creatures that you've slain, take the resources that you're owed and then return the cards to the deck. For any creatures that were captured, take a captured creatures token with a number on it that matches the threat level of that creature, and then shuffle the scout card back into the scout deck. Importantly, however, you must leave your health markers where they were at the end of the encounter. You have to heal back up between encounters, and this doesn't happen automatically. It's now time to head back to your encampment for the encampment phase. The encampment is where the Seekers come between encounters to rest, recuperate, and improve. At the start of the campaign, your encampment will have 3 level 1 buildings and a worker. As the campaign goes on, you can have up to 5 buildings, which can be leveled up to a maximum of level 3, and you can unlock the space for up to 6 workers. The actions and abilities that you'll be able to do during this phase depend on which buildings you have and how far you've upgraded them. There's also a limit to the total number of actions you're allowed to take. So let's go through the encampment phase step by step. Firstly, on your return, you can put all of the resources you've gathered into your encampment. There is no capacity limit for resources. There is, however, a capacity limit for your captured creatures. Your barracks, regardless of its level, can hold 1 creature, and remember you always start the game with the barracks, but you need the creature pen to store more than 1. A level 1 creature pen stores 1 creature, and a level 2 or 3 creature pen will store 2. Next, all seekers who are in the scenario, including down seekers, automatically go to the barracks to heal 5, 6 or 7 health, depending on whether it's a level 1, 2 or 3 barracks. You can only heal up to the maximum of your starting health. From this point forward until the end of the encampment phase, each seeker has 5 action points. These actions are resolved in worker placement rounds, and some of these buildings can hold more than 1 seeker, but some of them can't. There are also some actions which require you to spend more than 1 action point. So the way you would resolve this is each seeker would choose a location for the first round of actions, and you would resolve those actions. Any actions that took more than 1 action point, those seekers would remain there for the subsequent round until they'd spent all of those action points, while any seekers whose actions have been completely resolved can now move to a different location. So now let's look at each building. The Temple of Vil is where you can go for further healing beyond what you've done at the barracks for free. A seeker may spend 1 action point here to heal 2 more health. The temple doesn't get stronger as it gets leveled up, but it does have greater occupancy. At level 1, only 2 seekers may be there at a time. At level 2, 3 seekers may be there at a time. And at level 3, all 4 seekers may attend. The Seeker's Den gives you a once per encampment phase opportunity to find some more resources near the encampment. To do this, you'll send 2 seekers for a level 1 building, 3 seekers for a level 2 building, or 4 seekers for a level 3 building, and each of them spends 1 action. Then, regardless of the number of seekers, you will roll 1 die. The resources you gain depend on the level of the building and what you've rolled. So, for example, at a level 1 building where you roll a blank, you would get nothing. A level 2 building where you rolled a hit, you would get 1 random resource. And in the very best case, a level 3 building where you rolled a special, you would get 2 resources of your choice. Strictly speaking, these levels are based on the number of seekers you send. So while you can only ever send 2 seekers to a level 1 hunt, you could choose to send only 2 seekers on a level 3 hunt instead of 4. But if you did, you would get the level 1 benefits. Note as well that upgrading the Seeker's Den has some additional passive benefits, and once you've reached level 2 on this building, any Threat 2 creatures will drop an additional resource during encounters. At the workshop, you may craft items using the resources you've gathered. It costs 1 seeker 1 action to craft 1 item. The cost to craft an item is shown in the icons down at the bottom of the card, so here it's a blood and a heart. Once you have equipment, you can place it into your encampment, and then when you go to your next encounter, players can carry this into the encounter with their seekers. You can keep any number of equipment items in your encampment, but ultimately you'll want to equip these to your seekers to go into battle. Each seeker may carry 1 equipment item, with 1 seeker allowed to carry a second if you've got a level 1 workshop. When you have a level 2 workshop, 2 of your seekers can carry an extra equipment, and at level 3, all 4 of your seekers can carry 2 equipment items. The default crafting recipes available to you depend on your workshop level, and so these ones showing the single anvil are available when you're at a level 1 workshop. 2 anvils become available at level 2, and 3 at level 3. Additionally, if you have a worker in your encampment, and you have that worker's building to at least level 1, and that worker has a crafting recipe, then you may craft that recipe. All of these items will be in either the market or the unique card decks. Where it comes from the market deck, the cost to craft is what's printed down here on the worker, not what's printed down here on the equipment. This is the barter cost, which we'll get to shortly. The next action, and the most important one for leveling up your encampment, is to travel to the town of Silvestrem, and this takes 2 of your seekers and costs 3 actions each. There's no building required to take this action, and once you're in Silvestrem, you may take as many actions there as you'd like. Options are: you may sell captured creatures from your encampment board, gaining 1 gold per threat level on those creatures. So here this would give you 4 gold. You may hire workers. Draw 3 cards from the worker deck, and then you may hire up to 2 of them at a cost of 1 gold each, unless they have a higher price stated on the card. Place them into your workers' row, but beware you only have as much room there as there is space in your barracks. A level 1 barracks can hold 3 workers, a level 2 4, and a level 3 6. If you run out of space, you can fire a worker who is not returned to the worker's deck but is removed from the campaign entirely. Workers may have skills or crafting recipes, but they all have a building associated with them, and although you can hire a worker without having its building, you cannot use any of its skills until that building is at least level 1. You may barter. Flip over 3 cards from the market deck, that is, the ones with the little market card icon, and then you may choose to buy any one of them, this time for the barter cost in resources from your encampment, showing in the bottom right corner of the card. Finally, you may build or upgrade buildings in the encampment. This will cost you gold. A new building at level 1 will cost you 2 gold. Upgrading a level 1 building to a level 2 will also cost you 2 gold, and upgrading from level 2 to level 3 will cost 3 gold. The buildings you've upgraded are now immediately available for use by those still in the encampment. Additionally, upgrading buildings automatically unlocks some of the character skills that are available on these seeker boards. Here, for example, Swift Kick will become available as soon as you've built a level 1 creature pen. When this happens, you will place the unlock token here. Similarly, Luck of the Elves will be unlocked with a level 2 barracks, and it requires 2 separate types of leveled up buildings to get the Royal Bloodline. The last action, should you choose to take it, is Scouting. Scouting costs 2 Seekers, 2 actions each, and this is how you end the encampment phase and go into the next encounter. It must be the last action you take in an encampment phase. First, from the Scout deck, draw 2 Scout cards, +1 if you have a level 1 or 2 Seeker's Den, and +2 if you have a level 3 Seeker's Den. In this case, you draw a total of 3 cards. Choose the one that you wish to encounter next, and shuffle the others back into the Scout deck. Now check the season track, because different things are going to happen at the start or end of different seasons. At the end of Season 3, you get 1 bonus gold. At the end of Season 5, you get a gold and a free random worker. And at the end of Season 8, you get 2 free gold. Once you've checked for one of these renown bonuses, you increase the season to the next level. And if you enter a new season, this may trigger changes to the Scout deck. At the start of Season 3, shuffle all of the Threat Level 2 cards into the Scout deck. At the start of Season 5, remove all of the Threat Level 1 cards from the deck. At the start of Season 8, shuffle in the Threat Level 3s. And at the start of Season 10, remove the Threat Level 2s. Finally, set up the encounter that you scouted before. At the start of Season 10, you'll add 1 extra Threat Level 3 creature to the scenario. If you choose not to scout during an encampment phase, then your encampment is derelict. You will still go through the process I just described before for advancing the season. However, you'll skip the next encounter and go straight into another encampment phase. If you then choose not to scout again on the next season, then your encampment gets attacked. You would advance the season but then set up the scouting deck as if you'd reached the next threshold. So here in Season 4, you would immediately remove all of the threat level 1s from here, making it only a deck of threat 2s one season early. Then draw a single card and set up that scenario. You don't get a choice. And if you're in Season 10, then you'll treat any threat level 2 enemies that are on this scenario as threat level 3s. Although you won't add the 5th extra creature. If you survive the encounter, it comes with some damage to your encampment. Using the encounter cards, you'll draw 2, and then for each number that is between 1 and 3, you will have to destroy 1 worker, and for each number between 4 and 6, you'll destroy 1 building. Shuffle these back in and then draw from the deck to determine which one is destroyed. Here, for example, if I'm drawing for my worker, then I would destroy the worker in slot 3. And if I were drawing for my building, I'd destroy the building in slot 5. If the slot in either case is empty, then you get lucky and you don't suffer any penalty. As you go through the hunt or the campaign, you may come across what's known as a Wild Defender, which is a creature on one of these double-sized cards. Each of these comes with a weapon, but it's not a weapon that's used by the creature. This is an additional reward for killing that particular creature. This reward is gained instead of any resources that would usually be shown next to that creature's name. Wild Defenders cannot be captured and may only be faced once in a campaign. So the scouting card, which brought them into the scenario, is discarded from the campaign instead of shuffled back into the scouting deck after the encounter is done. The aim of the hunt mode of play is to survive 10 seasons of encounters and encampments, leveling yourself up to face the higher threat enemies that will come in the later seasons. The hunt is a randomly generated campaign which you can play over and over, with new encounters coming based on how you scout. The game also comes with a story-driven campaign which will lay out each of the scenarios exactly each time, but will give you some extra rules and a storyline that ties it all together. The campaign book also gives you some tips on how you can increase the difficulty of the game, should you wish to do so. As mentioned at the start of the video, we won't be covering the rules for the arena mode of the game, which, although using the same miniatures and a lot of the same components, is quite a different game. This is a player versus player combat mode, where the equipment that you gather has a much greater role to play than the equipment in the hunt mode. The creatures that we've been fighting against in the hunt are still present in the arena mode, but now you'll be controlling them against your opponents. There are red dice which represent your momentum in the battle and can give you some extra skills, and a deck of event cards which will give some different effects into each round of the combat. However, we'll leave you to read all of the differences for yourself in the arena rulebook. And that's how to play Wild Assent. We hope you enjoyed this video.
When we film this video, Wild Assent's second print with expansion is going to GameFound, so we'll put the link in the description below when it is live, so you can check it out. If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting that like button and subscribe to the Dice Tower if you haven't already done so.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave them in the comments section below.
See you next time!